Hello, and welcome to the
Kennedy Show.
I'm Golda.
I'm Wanru.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Kennedy.
And this is a podcast that's just like hanging out with your four best friends.
It's like nailing that maid of honor speech.
Ah, yes. It's like having your cat understand every single word that you say.
It's like giving your mom advice and she actually takes it.
It's like singing a duet at karaoke and nailing that harmony.
Oh, yeah. That sounds good.
In today's episode, we'll be talking about finding your voice. And you'll find out why we're all tingling from head to toe.
Ooh.
Yeah,
Very nice.
I feel skinnier.
I can
For some
feel it.
reason.
Why do you feel skinnier?
I don't know. I just do.
Well, whatever works.
So,
let's get started. On today's podcast, we'll be exploring the topic of finding your voice. And who better to explore that topic with than two of our good friends?
Yes, we're very excited to have two wonderful people here today. We have Kennedy Kabasares.
Hello, everyone.
And Kennedy is an aerialist, artist, actor, and buddy. He's my buddy, my friend. Welcome, Kennedy.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, of course. And we also have our good friend, Traci kato-kiriyama. And she is a writer, actor, and community activist.
Did she get your name right?
Did I
Yes,
say
it's
your
the hardest
name
name
right?
in the world. So
Yeah.
beautiful, Golda.
Thank you. I try. So both Kennedy and Tracy are actually in a really exciting show right now called Tales of Clamor. Is that right?
Yep.
That's correct.
So, don't let us talk about you. Why don't you talk about yourselves? Tell the good people out there a little bit about who you are.
Should we talk about? Well, together, Tracy and I are Pull Project Ensemble, and we have a show right now that's running at the Aratani Black Box Theater in downtown LA, in Little Tokyo, and it's called Tales of Clamor.
Great. Can you tell us a little bit about the show? What it's about?
It's a theater circus hybrid. It's a play that uses circus elements and sound and movement to tell the story of. Well, Tracy can tell you about the story.
Well, it has archival video footage of the hearings that were public testimony to what was called the Commission on Wartime, Relocation, and Internment of Civilians. So it was a pivotal moment that led to redress for Japanese Americans who were incarcerated during World War II. So we developed a show where our characters, Kem and Eddie, are sort of in a debate about cultural versus institutionalized silence and what it takes to break silence and what it means to show up today. And so it goes back into the past as they're creating this show. So it's sort of meta. Well, it literally is meta.
It is meta.
Yeah.
So we go back and forth between present time and the past, and that's where the rest of our cast, our chorus members, an amazing group of folks, 5 actors along with the two of us.
Who are the other actors?
Sharon Omi, Julie Lee,
Yeah.
Greg Watanabe, Kurt Kuniyoshi, and Takayo Fisher.
What?
Yeah.
And Diane Shimoto Kobayashi is understudying for Takayo.
It's
So
A really awesome cast.
they're
Wow.
amazing.
Yeah.
Dan
Amazing.
Kwong is the director.
All-star.
And just a great team of folks. And Allison Dela Cruz is our executive producer over at JCCC. And it's just been awesome to go through our first weekend of previews. And
We open this week.
we open on
Well,
Friday.
Yeah.
And what's that date there? On
February 8th is
February
the opening.
8th.
Yeah.
Wonderful. And
And
you run
then-
until March 3, it looks like?
Yes, Sunday,
Yes.
March 3.
Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Wonderful. What's it been like? You had mentioned that you'd mentioned silence and about that's why one of the reasons why we chose finding your voice as our topic for today. When you were going through this process of writing it and putting everything together and then looking at the archival footage and all of that, tell us a little bit about how silence is a part of this whole show or the idea of silence.
Well, the hearings happened in 1981, and this was for many of the people who testified during these hearings. They were in the Japanese internment camps in World War II. But so that they left in, was it 45 ish? 1940. They
44,
left the
45.
camps in about 44, 45.
Mm-hmm.
And 1981 was the hearings. And in between that period, a lot of those people never talked about their experiences in camp at all. Not even their children knew about their experiences in camp. So for 41 years, they kept silent about their experiences and any aspect of it, you know. And so this moment was the whole community, all these Japanese Americans who lived through that for the first time are speaking about their experiences. And it was, they kept it silent for many different reasons, but the moment where everyone started speaking, it was like a cultural catharsis for this group of people.
Wow. And for those out there that weren't aware, during that time in the 1940s, in the United States, we had Japanese Americans who were in these internment camps in the United States, right?
Yeah, they were in American concentration camps. So I'd like to clarify that use of that term. I actually don't use internment. Sort of with the school of thought, with the community that has really looked at euphemisms, right? The use of things like relocation and evacuation, which are used in terms of like natural disasters or emergency, right?
Sure, yeah.
So really, it was a mass incarceration, the single largest mass incarceration of citizens in the country. And yes, over 120,000 Japanese and Japanese Americans were put away into these camps, 10 concentration camps, many detention centers and prisons, and all kinds of facilities across the United States. So my parents, my dad's side and my mom's side, they were all put into Manzanar, which is the closest camp to Los Angeles. But there were camps in Arkansas and Arizona. They were all over the place. So Texas too also had another camp too. Yeah.
And so when you were developing this project, you found that the folks who were in the camps were having a hard time speaking about it or talking about their experiences. Is that what you discovered?
Yeah, well, when I first saw the footage, I think I was in college, and I just saw the footage from 81 of the testimonies at the hearings in Los Angeles.
Yeah. Those
were archived by Visual Communications and NCRR, which is Nikkei for Civil Rights and Redress. And so I just remember feeling really emotional and angry and like sort of just completely overwhelmed by looking at this footage of people who many years before had like obviously not talked until that moment. And I felt like I could literally hear like a collective voice cracking, you know, like when you're just mustering up like those first words that have been in your body and your head, but you've never said it out loud. Like I was put in this place. I lost all these things. Right. My family was separated, right? Like I didn't know where my father was taken, you know? And so just all these things. And one of the people that we show in a very short edit of the testimony in our show, Martha Okamoto, she talks about her brother who was shot in the back at Manzanar. And until that moment when she sang it, she had not even told her children.
Oh, wow.
And she had saved the bloody shirt.
Wow.
For decades. And people heard about it and they called her and they said, you know, you've got to talk about this.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it was that kind of this amazing footage that I felt like, oh man, if there's some way that we could do something more theatrical with it. And so that's when I asked Kennedy, what do you think? And then we approached NCRR and VC, and they were super awesome
NCRR is the National Coalition for Redress and Reparations. And they're a grassroots organization who was around in the 1980s to help these people create their testimonies and to organize to get people to testify.
Yeah.
VC is Visual Communications. They're an Asian American media arts organization, and they, along with NCRR, they were there also in the 1980s, and they recorded the Los Angeles hearings on video.
Yeah.
So they, along with NCRR, co-own the video that we're using for the show.
And all the other cities, they either did not film it or they can't find their footage. There's one city that had everything on like a VHS tape.
Oh boy.
And then they lent it to someone and then it got lost.
Oh my gosh.
No.
So
So it's really precious. Like this material, over 26 hours of testimonies, over 130 testimonies in LA, like almost all of them thoroughly archived. Video and audio.
Yeah, so that's the only known video archive of any of the testimonies that happened in the United States.
Yeah.
And like Tracy said, there were other cities that had maybe audio recordings and photographs, but not video recordings. So yeah, Los Angeles was the only one that we know right now has video recording.
Yeah, I was just up in San Jose a few months ago with NCR's new book launch, and they were talking about how they were like they're now in this process of like trying to find these like audio tapes.
Yeah. Oh, geez.
So people are really trying to find these stories because they are there's still lots of stories that even our own community does not acknowledge like popularly.
Why do you think that is?
Because I think that there was so much shame attached, because we're talking about assault, of all kinds that happened to people. Stories that I had heard when I went to the Tule Lake, which is up near Humboldt. Tule Lake was another concentration camp, and all the people who signed no to this loyalty questionnaire got sent there. They were sort of seen as like people who were troublemakers and things. So when I went to the pilgrimage up at Tule Lake, there was a man named Jimmy Yamaichi who would run the tours up there, and he would tell us these really heinous stories about assaults and sexual assaults, and women being asked or made to disrobe in front of others outside of the stockade, and just I think stuff like that even still like our community has a hard time talking about or thinking about.
Yeah, so that's the question that came to my mind, which is that as a Japanese American and just in general in the United States, how do you think that giving voice to their experiences, these people who were interned or who were forced into these concentration camps, how do you think that's changed the feeling of the community, the Japanese American community, or maybe just of your own community? Do you think there's been a shift hearing these stories and hearing these voices?
Yeah, I think that in so many of our talks with like Kathy and Richard and all the NCR members, time and again, they kept pointing to that moment in 1981, which was several years before redress was passed in 88. They always point to that week of the commission hearings as like the big shift.
Oh, wow.
Because even generationally, generationally, the Issei, the first generation, Nisei, the second generation, the Sansei, the third generation, there was a lot of separation. There was a lot of disconnection. And, when one generation is asking another to speak up and, just like there was so much internal tension about even thinking about going for reparations. That, I think it sealed that moment of being together in those hearing rooms that made everybody really like listen together. So many of the members of NCRR that we have interviewed and talked with, they really do focus a lot on the moment in 1981, which was several years before redress was passed in 1988. They really talk about that week of the hearings at the Los Angeles State Building and at the Little Tokyo Towers, where people came together across generations. And I think even going back to the time of incarceration, there was so much disconnection, there was so much separation. There were a lot of Issei, first generation, who felt very disempowered. The younger generation, the Nisei, who could speak English, they were actually the ones who took a lot of leadership roles in the camp, and I think some of them felt very empowered, but then there was a lot of division and tension in between, depending on if you were perceived to be loyal or not. We've just had so much, I think, intergenerational conflict So when even people who were against redress and against the hearings, people went to just watch and witness what was going to happen. And by like the end of the first day, they were changed. And they ended up wanting to testify before the weekend was over.
So where was the tension from? Was it between generations or just differences?
I think within generations, between generations, I think people, there were a lot of people who did not want to think about it again. They didn't want to talk about it again. They certainly did not want to go for redress. And then, of course, you had on the other end people saying, we have to do this. We have to speak out. We have to let the world know about it, because now we have all of these places of incarceration where we can visit. We can visit Manzanar, right? We can visit Tule Lake. We can visit these places. But we have to remember that was because our community went back and opened up those gates.
That wound, opened up that wound.
They literally did, right? And so they were the ones to say, whoa, we need to know this piece of where we come from. And we all, as like American people and people of this world, need to know about this crazy time.
Yeah.
The government wasn't like, here, you all should remember what we did. Let's keep these gates unlocked. Let's build a national monument. Let's have an education program, right? They meant for us to forget. They meant for us, in Jim Matsuoka's words, like he feels like we were meant to be kind of like extinguished. That's the word that he uses. That their spirit was meant to just be lost forever. And I think that I've heard from them time and again that they feel if they didn't have that moment to have everybody kind of like collectively break silence, that they would not have gone through a collective catharsis,
Yeah.
And so there are just so many people that talked. And one of the moments that kind of galvanized even the hearings themselves was the first person they had testify was a guy named S.I. Hayakawa, who was notorious for being an apologizer and somebody who felt that the camps were okay. And he was a Canadian Japanese guy.
So he was a proponent.
Yes, and he was the first to testify in LA. And so he was talking about how many works of art came out of the concentration camp experience, and they had fun, and they had school, and they had
that's reframing to another level.
Seriously.
And he was the first one to speak. And so you hear in the background everybody like
booing.
They're just done. They're just like booing, and then there was like all this ruckus. But Mia Iwataki and others say like that kind of set the tone for the weekend, because it was finally a moment that they're like, hell no,
they're not going to take it anymore. Right?
Certainly not here. And I think it just broke them open. So there's some very, very dramatic moments throughout the whole thing.
Yeah, the videos just show some really amazing moments that it's just amazing to see these people talking, the emotions that are coming out, especially for the people who've never talked about it before.
Yeah,
it's quite moving to see it happen, and it's very cathartic. And it's amazing also because of what they did, and in the 11 cities that they held these hearings in. I think we forget. History forgets that the government, because of these hearings, the government apologized. They made an apology. They said sorry, which means you don't say sorry unless you knew you did something wrong.
Right.
So they said sorry, and they gave a monetary compensation for all the families, and they set up programs to opening up these former camps as national historic sites. And that would not have happened to the extent that it did without these people talking. So that's also one reason why we also wanted to show the video, is because this part of history is very important, but nobody remembers it or talks about it. I mean, we kind of know now that in schools and history wise, we remember that the Japanese were put away in camp. They were imprisoned in these camps, but we forget that 40 years later they spoke up and got an apology, and they made things right. And that's not what we're not taught about that part.
You know what's interesting is I was listening to spiritual leader Marianne Williamson, and she was talking about how she believes that, not that the Japanese Americans were not wounded or set back in their own personal lives because of what happened, but that because the United States the government acknowledged what happened and that it was wrong and paid reparations, the Japanese Americans have been able to move forward, meaning they've been able to process it, maybe by speaking up, maybe by telling their story, and they have been able to have families and move on in their careers and move on and become teachers and advocates and just sort of heal the wound and integrate back into the United States community. But that African Americans continue to struggle to this day. There's such a gap between whites and blacks in this country, and it's because of the lack of the apology and lack of the acknowledgement of what slavery did to the black people. So I think talking and sharing is a big part of healing and of moving on. So I think this is a huge and significant moment for Japanese Americans.
Yeah.
And it helps us to remember, but also to make peace, I think, to process it and not to hold on to that anger. I can't speak as a Japanese American. I would have to ask you if you think that's true. Like if you can feel it, but not, how should I say, dwell in it.
Well, I always think about in terms of like the apology and what that did.
Yeah.
Like I think a lot about what I hear Kathy Masaoka say, and that it ultimately wasn't about winning. It was going through that process to get each other to speak out.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And to galvanize every other community who also showed up to give them a chance to show their support.
Oh yeah, there was
Yeah.
and NCRR will also say that they didn't do it alone, that they had help from other communities as well. There was a Native Americans spoke out, Latino community spoke out, the Jewish community came out, and they had support
Black community,
from the,
I mean,
just
just
support from the
across
Black
the board.
Caucus.
Quakers.
Quakers came out. So it wasn't just the Japanese American community; it was other American communities coming together and speaking on their behalf or support of what they were doing. So that's also one of our messages in the show, is that speaking out. It's good to speak out. It's also good to remember to speak out for other people as well,
Oh,
or
yes,
support
I
in
like
support
this.
of other people.
Yeah.
You know.
And that actually ties in really nicely, because this has been a nice introduction to the show and obviously of your relationship and everything. But I also wanted to know about how you each personally found your voice. So I'm just going to tie it in a little bit, because what you said, Kennedy, really kind of reminded me of something, which is you said speaking up for other people. And so my personal story, I'll just make it really short because we've talked about this before, is I am what I consider a nice person, quote unquote. I'm nice. I'm a people pleaser. That's kind of how I view myself. And I never really wanted to ruffle any feathers or disrupt anybody. But especially in this political climate, I realized that it's not good enough to be nice. If you really believe in your values and what you think is right and wrong, you have to take action and speak up for those who, I don't even want to say that they're fearful, but they're not in a position to speak up. And Golda already knows this story, but there was a guy at my work who was behaving inappropriately towards women. I worked with him for 11 years. I had been avoiding him for 9.5 of those years. And I didn't realize the extent to which he had been pretty much abusing the women at my work. And so finally, I witnessed something, and someone confided in me that she had felt very uncomfortable with this particular person. And I said, I have to go to HR. I have to. I said, I don't care if this guy gets fired. It's not my problem. It's up to the company to make a decision. So after many years of thinking, oh no, it's just me, or, maybe I'm blowing this out of proportion. I realized because I didn't speak up 10 years ago, it happened for 10 years to other women. And for some of these women, their jobs were not secure. Some of them were temps. Some of them were undocumented. And I have a very secure job, and I've always had a very good relationship with my employer. And I was like, I am well educated. I speak English well. My job is secure. I've worked here 10 years. I have never had the slightest mark on my record. Not that any of these things should matter, but HR, they will take these things into consideration. So I led the little exodus to the HR department, and then I let all the women know that I went, and if they won't feel comfortable, they should go. And very soon afterwards, my company laid that person off.
Oh,
And, you know, at first I felt like a burden on my shoulders, like I took a job away from somebody. But then I realized, you know what? It's not my job. I just tell my story. It enabled these other women to tell their story. And HR made the decision. And thank God, because they made the right decision. So I guess my personal story of finding my voice is being a nice person doesn't mean you don't speak up. And actually, you're obligated to, because there are people who can't speak up because they just are not in a position to. So it's your job, right, to do that.
Absolutely.
I always think it's like not a matter about being nice or mean.
Yeah.
Like I appreciate you saying it. You just needed to share what you knew. You just needed to share your story. And I feel like you're advocating for the safety and dignity and comfort and health of so many people. And there's consequences to what this person did.
Exactly.
Right. And it's like, whose comfort are we, right, privileging?
Yes.
And his comfort was privileged for many, many years. So he had his time.
Exactly. Yeah. And so I think I feel this shift in America now where, because we were complacent before, maybe not you guys, but I was very complacent. I'm like, everything's okay. It's hunky-dory. But I felt like, oh my gosh, if as a quote unquote nice person, meaning a person who wants to respect somebody else, you can't let wrongdoing happen without calling a light to it, you know? And I think as being an Asian American and coming from, my family's all from Taiwan, and I understand, I relate to the Japanese experience as well. There's a lot of cultural baggage associated with speaking up as well. I'm going to throw it to Golda. Didn't you say something about your...
What?
About your...
What did I say?
I was like, oh, wow, that's so funny how you're talking about how you're a woman now. You're a full-grown woman, but
I still feel like a child.
of course.
I still feel like a little child.
To whom, though?
Yeah, I think I for me, in terms of finding my voice, I can see it on the personal side, and I can also see it on the career corporate side. So many of you know that I have a corporate job, a 9-to-5 type of job. And where I found some struggle with finding my voice is usually in a board meeting or a team meeting of some kind. And actually in a performance review that I received about 3 years ago, this was brought up as something to work on, a developmental need.
Is that what they call it?
Yeah, just work on it. You know, nobody's perfect. Meaning something's wrong with you. That's HR speak. Okay, so basically in these team meetings, there's a group of maybe 10, 12 of us, and it's a very vibrant group, and they talk and they give their ideas and they share stories, et cetera, et cetera. And my background is in the arts, is acting, and how I've been trained is to listen and to pay attention and to absorb, and also my personality is one to listen, to give time for folks to feel like they can share their experiences, be considerate, that kind of thing.
But these corporate hogs just take the floor.
They're
They don't
totally
know. They don't know how to
selfish.
share the floor like actors are taught.
Yeah, right. So, and then usually at the tail end, if it's an hour-long meeting, I'll speak up like the last 10 minutes, and I'll say, "Okay, so here's my idea." Blah 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 blah. And what my boss told me as my developmental need was that usually, Golda, you have the best idea in the room, and you always wait until the very end to share what your idea is. I would like for you to speak up earlier in the meeting, right? She said, you need to find your voice. And I'm like, I know what my voice is. My voice is at the end after I've processed it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, because maybe
valid.
that's your process. Maybe you listen to what everyone else is saying, and then you're like, okay, well, you know, after hearing what they're saying, you're like developing your own based on what they say.
Sure.
And like, well, after hearing what everyone else said, here's what I've come up with.
Yeah.
And you couldn't have come up with that if you'd spoke out at the beginning because you didn't hear anybody, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So maybe that's your process. And why don't they take that into account?
I think that was, that's definitely something that I'm going to play this video for her when it's published. But that was something that gave me pause.
Okay, let me ask you
Right?
though. Do you think her observation was legitimate? Like, do you think that you should speak up in the beginning, and that you were holding back, or were you like what Kennedy's saying, which is I was just processing, lady. That's just the way I work.
It's all about Kennedy in this particular situation, because the reality is that I like listening to people.
Yeah.
I like to process and take it in and then incorporate and use my own examples to fit in and complement and enhance maybe what other people were talking about. That's just the way I do things. I
It's
think
a form of teamwork.
It totally
You're
is.
acknowledging the process of the team.
Absolutely.
And people have different types of ways, especially in the corporate world, they have different ways of working.
Yeah.
And maybe your way of working is not similar to them, but it doesn't mean it's not as valid or helpful.
Sure.
Right? So, I mean, the way you process it, you've come up with a new idea because you're a listener.
Yeah.
Right? So that's, I think that's still a valid way. I mean, because well, I don't know. That's just a valid way, and that's another strength of yours, that how you add to the team.
Yeah.
That's my 2
I
cents.
thought it was interesting when you were sharing earlier over dinner about like the perceptions of what that meant.
Yeah. So the perception, thank you, Tracy, for that. I think that the perception, if you don't say anything at the front end, is that you don't have anything valuable to contribute because you don't have something at the ready, right? Or you're not a strong person because you can't articulate something right away in a very kind of assertive manner, right? Or you're judging everybody else and then you're picking and choosing what you want to comment on because you're secretly judging what people were.
It's all negative.
Everything's negative.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think definitely.
So why did you say when your boss told you that it gave you pause? What did you mean by that?
I think because inherently, here's my take on finding your voice, right? My take on finding your voice is find what is unique to you and own that uniqueness.
Yes.
Even if it means going against the tribe, whatever the tribe means for you, work, community, home, friends, whatever. Even if it means going against the tribe, if you communicate or if you do your thing that is authentic to you and you own it, that's the best you can do, in my opinion. So that's how I had been living this whole time. And then so when she said, oh, you really should, think about, chiming in earlier, it made me think, oh, have I been doing it wrong all this time? Maybe I should be more like that and kind of like squeeze myself into this little box of what is acceptable behavior, right?
Okay, what if I'm just going to push back. I got to give her a hard time.
Yeah, do it.
What if instead your boss said, you wait till the end to say something, but I would like you to give more ideas because I think they're so good.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel like you're holding back for these other people. Don't hold back.
Mm-hmm.
How would you react to that criticism? What'd you call it? What'd you call the criticism?
Judgmental?
No,
What?
judgmental. What did you call it? You said the HR speak for criticism, but it's not.
Oh, yeah, it's developmental.
Yeah,
The developmental.
How would you react to that developmental thing?
I would be diplomatic as I always am. And I would say, fair point to want to hear more of that up front. And I'll certainly try that version. However, that said, that goes counter to my fabric. And I've actually said this because my boss actually said to me, because there's a lady at work that does exactly what she was describing I need to do. So she goes, you need to be more like Jane, the person who does what she was describing. Huh. And what I said to her was, that makes me cringe because I'm not Jane. That's Jane.
Yeah.
That's not me.
Yeah.
So that was at that moment, it did give me pause, but I did find my voice, because when something is it's so blaringly against what you do or who you are. And this is why when you're talking about, the folks who, in the JA community who in 1981, when they heard that guy say that thing about, oh yeah, they had artists were born from this. That was like my mini version, really
scale, yes.
super like fraction. I think for me that was a trigger. Like, no.
See, that's kind of my point too, which is that sometimes the loudest voices are dumbasses. In my estimation,
there is no direct correlation between the loudest voice and the best idea.
Also, the first.
Yeah.
Here, everything is so much about like who coined it, who said it first.
Yeah.
First.
Yeah.
As opposed to, maybe it's a swirl of idea that's in a room and it's the fruition of collective thought and discussion and discourse, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, enough about me. I want to hear about our guests and what they, I want to find their voice.
Well, you know what happened to us. You know how we found our voices at work in corporate America. What about you two? How did you two find
Kennedy,
your voices?
What do you think?
We could talk about two different things. There's my rediscovery of circus.
Yeah.
And how that became a thing for me. I mean, that's a cool story. I mean, I went to high school. I went to a performing arts high school. And so I got it. And I loved performing from a young age. I just loved performing. But I'm also a very shy person. In real life, I'm very quiet and kind of shy. I really am. But I had this joy when I discovered performing. So I went to a performing arts high school, so I learned acting and improv. And that was really fun. And I found my sense of humor through improv in high school. And I found that I have this, this knack for, improvisational humor. And like twice a week, we had this woman come teach us circus arts. Her name was Judy Finelli, and she was part of the Pickle Family Circus in San Francisco. And they were in the 70s. They were like the San Francisco's version of Cirque du Soleil type thing, where they're changing the way people approach circus as artists, as opposed to just like spectacle. Look at me balance this thing on my head, and turn it into a theatrical medium. Turning circus into a theatrical medium. So she taught basic circus stuff. And I enjoyed it a lot. I had so much fun with it, but I didn't know what to do with it, And when I went to college, I majored in theater, and I again more acting and more reading tons of plays, and I really wanted to get into physical acting. I didn't do much physical acting because of just scheduling and whatever. And then when I graduated I didn't graduate from college. Just FYI.
For the record.
Own it.
I never graduated from college. So when I left college, I went right into acting and again, improv, and I started doing stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
And that was a lot of fun. And I enjoyed doing that. I enjoyed like improv and stand-up because I used my own writing, and it was my own voice, and I was on stage. But there was something that wasn't the all for me. It wasn't everything. It was fun, and I was good at it, but it wasn't like I should be doing this all the time. This is what I'm going to do for the rest of my life or whatever. This is my medium. It didn't feel like it. And then when I was in my 30s, I discovered there was a place in Los Angeles that was teaching flying trapeze, where you're on a trapeze and you swing and you get caught by someone else and they throw you back. And I thought, okay, I'll take a class there, and I took a couple classes there, and it was fun because it brought me back to high school and when I was trying all this different type of circus stuff. So I was like, I remember this thrill again of being doing circus stuff, and that was kind of fun. But flying trapeze just didn't have the thing for me. It was fun, but it wasn't very
expressive.
Exactly. It wasn't an expression for me. It wasn't a form of expression. So they offered a static trapeze class, which was a single trapeze, and it didn't swing. You just learn how to move above it, below it, around it, and these really creative, dance-like, acrobatic things. I took my first class, and I almost threw up because it was that hard. And I went in my car and I said, I'm just going to take a little nap. And I slept for like an hour in my car. And I woke up and I was like, I got to do this again. It was like, I woke up and I said, for some reason, my mind said, you got to come back here and do this again. And I kept taking that class and I learned more and more, and I just I couldn't stop taking it because for some reason I felt like this was my form of expression. I don't know what it was about it, but I felt that I could express myself a lot through this apparatus, and I don't know why, but it felt right for me. It felt like I was speaking, with this apparatus, and this was my instrument. And after that, like for a while, that's all I thought about. Like, how can I say this on a trapeze? It's like monologues. How do I say this monologue on a trapeze? Or how would I interpret these lyrics on a trapeze?
And that's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And actually, I want to acknowledge all those different artists who express themselves. Like when I hear a person play violin sometimes, I'm like, that is their voice, right? Like when they play, it's like they're speaking to me through this instrument or piano or whatever. The violin, oh my God, it really cuts into me. It feels like it's like when a woman sings or whatever.
Yeah.
So I can't wait to see you. I'm going to see your show in 2 weeks.
Oh, good.
But I can't wait to see this physical expression of man, trapeze.
Oh, you have not seen Mr. Kennedy.
Never.
Oh, no? Oh.
I've seen him several times.
Okay, give me a little preview. What is it
I
like?
cannot do what he does. You want me to reenact? No. Is that what you mean?
A verbal description of what I'm going to feel. What's it like when you watch him on the trapeze?
He is an extension of whatever he's expressing at that moment. I mean, I've seen early versions of Tales of Clamor, their show. Gosh, the first one was what, 2 years ago?
I think about 2 years ago, yeah.
Wow. And even before then, I went to the Kinetic Circuit. Kinetic Theory show. And yeah, Kennedy absolutely owns it. And it feels like you are so committed to where you are at that moment. It doesn't feel like that there's anybody else there. I feel like I'm intruding because it feels like you're doing this by yourself.
Wow.
And then we're just there and we're like, and I remember being I think you were there. I remember being really quiet and I was holding my breath because I felt like I didn't want you to know I was there. Anyway, it just felt really personal.
So intimate.
It felt very personal.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Beautiful.
Thank
you
you.
were in for a treat, Wanru.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
It's going to seriously blow you away. I have an addendum to that story from an observational part. Like as your artistic partner or one of your artistic partners, we were in a trio at the time called 03, and Kennedy emailed me and Edrin that he was going to start taking this class. And
Edrin is the other member of
he was the other member
trio
of 03. Mm-hmm. And Kennedy was like, "You guys want to take this class with me?" And Edrin didn't even answer. and I was like, I don't really have time for that, but it sounds cool, man. And literally, it was amazing just a month later to hear Kennedy talk about circus.
Yeah.
And he was like, dude, I see everything in trapeze.
Wow.
I see everything in circus. And I felt like I was witnessing the artist of
That's
Kennedy.
Beautiful.
Just blossoming out. We knew you as an actor, and you showed us your tape of stand-up, right? But yeah, it was like, oh no, this is Kennedy, the artist. It was, I'll never forget that moment.
So this physical thing helped you to express your voice inside, not voice like speaking, but like your feelings or your emotions or your thoughts.
Yeah, I found that I could express better than any other form, talking or writing or music. I felt that was my medium that I could express much better, more than I could in any other medium. I felt like I could express a lot through that. Yeah.
Yeah. And how many apparatuses do you perform on now?
Well, my main apparatus is a static trapeze, but I know enough of tissue or silk to create something. A little bit of cordelice, which is just a single rope.
Okay.
That's about it. And the rolling globe, which you'll see in the show.
Yay!
Should we say all the apparatuses that you do in the show?
In the show, so in the show, I do a silk, and then there's a little bit of frame. There's an aerial frame. I don't do much in it, but it's an important part of the show. I juggle silks. And I walk on stilts. and I walk on a globe. So
Wow.
and I had
the
trapeze.
static trapeze.
And the trapeze. So I do
So
6
6.
things.
Yeah.
Man, does that make you want to watch the show?
Absolutely. Man, chock full of good stuff there.
So that's beautiful that you were able to find something that you connected with so much and allowed you to express yourself on a bigger level. And like
Yes.
you said, own your unique thing.
Absolutely.
What about you, Tracy? Do you have the equivalent of a piece of silk that you like juggle or like a globe that you like drape yourself over? I'm imagining him draping
It's
himself.
just not as spectacular as that.
fine,
It's
that's
just not. I mean, I've heard this, question being posed before, and it's funny because I always kind of struggle with it, and I think because for me, I think that it really just goes way back to my mom being like my example, my first example of just speaking what you think and believe in.
Oh,
And
nice.
she was very different from a lot of the Japanese American mothers in my neighborhood. So much so that when something was going on at the school or there were complaints, they would go to my mom to ask her to talk to the school.
Oh, wow.
Wow.
So it's very obvious that she was not afraid to do that. And I think, when I think more creatively in terms of like finding my voice, I see it as a sort of a participatory act, in that I think understanding my so-called audience was part of my journey in finding my voice. And what I mean by that is I was like publishing in a community newspaper called the Rafu Shimpo from the time I was about 18 or 19 years old. And I was like putting in like essays and bad poetry and just like processing through all these things that I was feeling and thinking and issues in the world and things happening and, just submitting just constantly all of this stuff. And then I would go to community events and people, a lot of times my parents' age, would come up to me and talk to me about what they were reading. And then I was like, oh, I'm not just like submitting this stuff and it's just going nowhere. And, there's actually people reading it and in their words, thinking that they're getting to know me. And I was like, oh, maybe this is what is meant by like audience and also responsibility. And I thought, now I have people in mind when I'm writing, right? When I'm expressing. And so they sort of help me to understand my own process and like why it mattered, who I was saying these things to and for,
Wow.
And so I think to me, that was a big part of it. And I was just one of those kids who never knew what they wanted to do. I wanted to do everything. I didn't care what I majored in. It had to be something that I just thought was great for my like intellectual self. And it didn't matter. I was just like, I just need a BA. And the assumption was that I was going to follow in my parents' footsteps and become a school teacher. And then I, started to do a lot of writing. And then I would do like these readings. And then I saw this theater company called Here and Now in college. And for whatever reason, as soon as they said that they were holding auditions, no experience necessary, it's like I completely in that moment knew that's what I was going to do. It just made absolute sense. But again, it was participatory in that there was an opportunity put in front of my face, right? And to just go, okay, that just makes sense because we're telling our own stories. We're writing our own characters. We're being ourselves on this stage. And that is a form of education. That's a form of, right, like engaging in community. So I think those are the things that kind of help me to understand what it meant to exercise my voice, right? To practice having a voice.
It was almost like it was a feedback loop and you saw your impact and the feedback that you gave that you received actually shaped your voice and shaped who you were talking to actually.
Sure.
Yeah.
Impact, also confusion, right? If I wrote something or shared a story and I got feedback and they're getting something, even if it's positive, but it's not what I was trying to say, that's good feedback, right? That's a good place to take a note to say, okay, well, I need to think more about how I'm saying that because I want this thing to be understood, right?
So that's actually a great tip.
Yeah.
And actually, if it's okay, I was going to segue into the next one anyway,
Sure.
which is we've given a little bit of background on each of us finding our own voice and what that means to us. So I was going to say, what tips do you have to help people kind of hone their voice?
Oh.
So Tracy gave one, which is sort of gauge the impact that you're having or get some feedback and you'll see if you're actually having an impact or if it's not landing the way you want.
Yeah, I think like learning how to take a note, learning how to take audience feedback. So if you have a reading and then there's like this popcorn of like feedback, right? And the best sessions of those, I think, are the ones where the facilitator makes sure that the audience doesn't get into a you should. More, what did you hear and feel? And so I'm not looking for like positive or negative. I'm looking for just what seems to be received, what seems to be understood. Because they could be emphatic and be like, I love that. That was all about, this relationship and this generation. And they could be so happy about it. But if I'm like, oh, wow, that's actually totally not what I'm trying to say there, right? I have to take that as a note to help me clarify, right? So it's not about searching for positive or negative per se. It's just like, what are you getting? What are you hearing? What are you feeling? What are you seeing? Right? And so you can take the note out of any response. I think that's really important.
Wow.
Kennedy would say, join a circus.
Take a class with Kennedy. Kennedy teaches, y'all.
Yeah, I do teach as well. So, take my class. But no,
We'll include that in the show notes.
Okay. I think for me, it's just, I found the medium in which I could express myself the best. So I think it's, in some ways, it's finding the correct medium in which you feel that you express yourself, I guess fluently. Is that the word? You express yourself with ease and with the medium in which you find the easiest to get your point across, or where it feels like effortless to express yourself. Find that medium. And some people it's painting, some people it's cooking, or writing. Find the medium in which you feel that what you want to say comes out at the end in the way you wanted it to say.
I was going to say that let's not confuse effortless with enjoyment.
Yes.
So
Yes.
your class was very, very hard, that first trapeze class you took. It was grueling.
Yes, it was.
But it sparked in you this love and this excitement.
Yeah.
So I would say probably if I can shape it more, okay, because now I'm giving feedback here, is that find the thing that makes you really excited, innervated, energized, and kind of follow that feeling and see where that goes, I would say, even if it's hard, because it was very physically hard. I've taken aerial classes and they're hard. They're
Yeah,
grueling.
a couple of classes, right?
Yeah. And I can't wait to take one with Kennedy. But but it was physically hard. It wasn't effortless. You weren't fluid and immediately.
Yeah, exactly.
But the love of it was drawing you to it.
I knew that there was something there in which I could express myself completely, and I said, I know it's hard, but I know I want to express myself this way.
Ooh,
and I think it's
cool.
In
is that?
addition to love, what I'm also hearing, and I this resonates with me too, that you are finding something where you're communicating.
Yes,
like you're like, this is landing.
Yeah,
what's in my head and body, and from what I am seeing from my audience, right? Like the reception of that. I'm communicating what I want to communicate in the way I want to communicate. Yeah. Yeah. It's clarity. Like, I don't know. I'm so big on clarity.
Oh,
nice.
Yeah.
Right?
It's interesting when you were saying, or when I said, remember when I said this really great thing? When I was saying how when I saw one of your shows, that it felt so personal and like what you were doing and all of your movements and the static trapeze, it felt like an extension of who you were at the time. It reminds me of a story that I heard of an artist I think we all love, Sia.
Oh yeah.
Right. Our producer Gertie had seen her in Hollywood Bowl, and she is notoriously not. she doesn't want to be seen, right? She had the wig, covering her face. And this was several years ago, right? I won't say more than 10 years ago, maybe. And she sang this song where it was just her and some minor accompaniment. And as she was singing the song, she was using her body.
Oh, wow.
To communicate the song. So it wasn't just here in vocal gymnastics. She was using her whole body in the Hollywood Bowl, just her on stage. And it was like dead silent. Like people were riveted watching her. So I remembered that story that a producer, Gertie, told me a while ago. And then I was making that parallel to you and how you are and how you're able to communicate.
And he literally does use his whole body.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
From head to toe.
To little tippy toe.
Wow.
I'm a very baby aerialist, but my aerial teacher always says that to me. She goes, either point your toe or flex your foot. Make a choice.
Yeah.
Oh.
And I'm like, my toe has to have a choice.
Oh, you're going to love Kennedy's point. Kennedy's point is...
pointed toe? Oh, my God. I can't wait to see that.
I can't wait.
Okay, how about you,
feet are
Golda?
ridiculous.
What about me?
What's your tip? Give people some tips on how to
my
find their voice.
Well, I think that for me, okay, here, let me break it down. Okay, so I feel like you got to get to a point where you don't give two fucks about what the fuck people are going to say or think or do, or if they're going to like your post or whatever, comment on, your Facebook post or whatever. You can't give any fucks to it. Yeah. I think that is true freedom, and it allows for you to truly become your authentic self. And for you, once you find who your authentic self is, your voice will follow, or sometimes your voice comes first. But for me at least, I find that I have an internal compass, and when something goes counter to that, such as the example I gave you for my job, it's very blaringly clear, and you have to get to a point, for me at least, where I didn't care. I cared more to be myself. Than to follow another path and to mimic another voice. That's the other thing is, there are a lot of cool voices out there of individuality. It doesn't mean that that's for you.
Yeah. No, I agree. Authenticity has a lot to do with finding your voice, just being true to yourself and not being ashamed of what you are and just being open with what you really are. That has a lot to do with finding your voice.
Absolutely. How about you, Wanru? What's your example?
Oh gosh, these are
you better
so
make
good.
me cry. You better make me cry.
Why?
I'm just kidding.
Why do I gotta make you cry?
Because it's a personal example. It's a personal example.
Oh gosh, I don't know. I'm going to straddle a bridge here.
Oh, okay.
And I'm going to borrow from Golda.
Okay.
Which is
because I straddle many of bridges. A bridge.
Exactly.
Tell us.
Which is, I like Golda because now I'm going to use as my example of how to find your own voice.
Okay.
Which is, she has her own internal compass. She's authentic to herself, but she doesn't always need to say it in the harshest way because she's in HR. She's found a way to say it in a tactful but
covered in silk. The insult is coming, but no, go on. Tell me more about me.
The insults will come at you like a graceful foot off of an aerialist toe, right?
Yeah,
No. I mean, you find your truth, you speak the truth, but you do not need to be rude about it. Because I think, again, there's this confusion that the loudest voice is the right one. But what I like about her is that she's tactful about it, that she can be honest and authentic, which is speaking your truth.
Yeah.
But you don't have to hurt people's feelings.
Yeah.
And there's no ego with her involved when she's sharing that with you as well.
Yeah. Thanks, Wanru.
Yeah,
That's very nice.
My tip is be like
this
Golda.
episode took a turn of compliments to Golda.
Kindness is so important.
Kindness is a good thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think that's what I feel like
Yeah.
That's exactly what you're saying. Like, because we want to work with people we want to work with, right? We want to work with people that you show up every day and you just know you're in good hands. You're going to have fun. Everyone's going to commit 100% and everyone's going to be kind to each other. Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't have to be jerks. I hope that's an old thing now.
What?
Remember like in the old school days, I don't know, like old theatrical days where everything was like, everyone is a jerk. But now it's more kind now, isn't it?
What do you mean, like egos and like?
No.
I think for the most part.
I hope so. I hope so.
Yeah, I think
Sure.
theater has become more kind.
You should see how mad Kennedy gets when someone moves his globe, though.
or someone like twists the silk just a different way.
I
Do
mean,
you
I
know
do-
who
the way
I
I
am?
left
I do
it.
think there's like a greater consciousness about how we talk to each other and treat each other and
true.
listen to each
Yeah.
other,
True.
right? I do think that maybe that there has been some shifts, but at the same time, it's like a room full of different people. So we're all, ultimately there's going to be conflicts and debates and I always think about like how far do we take it? Because we've had a lot of debates, not so much between me and Kennedy, but it's a big room of people. And we've definitely had debates. And one thing that's been on my mind with these like sort of passionate, impassioned moments is how much are we in taking space to say our opinion? How much are we also like making room for dialogue? Right. So that it's not like a monologue, but like, how are we like really making sure that we can listen to each
Yeah, that
other
everyone
and
is being
make
heard.
sure that we understand when, as much as we're giving an opinion, like understand that there's also questions to be asked. And
Yeah.
but I think that's always like a challenge, right? Because
Yeah.
this is such personal work. It's, we don't get paid enough for it to just be something that we take for granted, right?
Right.
It's all love and labor. So.
Right.
Yeah.
You know, I recently saw this thing on YouTube. It was the Kings of Leon were doing a acoustic set.
Ooh.
So they play stadiums. Okay. And so this is kind of right before they were going to shoot the acoustic video for YouTube as a promo, I assumed. And they argued for 15 minutes.
About what?
It's like, hey, what you got 5 amps and here I am with my acoustic guitar. Am I like Neil Young? I'm being Neil Young right here. What the hell are you? They're like arguing about how this acoustic quote unquote set is. Oh, now you got another amp. Oh, you got another. Okay, now we got a bass. What the hell is this? They're so impassioned and passionate about their art, and they all have their own voice, and they're all trying to make room for each other's voices. But you can tell because they're all musicians, they're just consummate performers. They just wanted to get it right,
Right.
Yeah.
or what they thought was their version of right. And I was like, it's so great. They're like these top level performers, but they still fight it and bicker amongst each other like they did when they were like practicing in their friend's garage. And I love that about them.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know where that story's going, but it's find your voice.
Collaboration.
But find your voice, but share the floor.
Yeah.
And check your ego.
Yeah. At
Right.
the door. Hey, we
Yeah.
rhymed. We rhymed. Find your voice, share the floor.
Check your ego at the door.
Wow, this is like an incantation. Like Bewitched.
We're turning that into a song by the end of this podcast.
And now we have arrived at one of our most popular segments called Girl, You Got To. And this is a segment where we ask our guests or ourselves to provide some life hacks, some tips and tricks to kind of get us through life. So, Miss Tracy, what is your Girl You Got To?
Okay, yeah, I wanted to share for today something that I never leave home without is a bottle of organic food grade peppermint essential oil.
Ooh.
And I will let you all
Oh, yes.
sniff.
Okay.
Man, this is
Go
where
ahead and
Smell TV
pick
would
it
come
up.
in handy.
And
huh?
what I love,
Ooh.
it's so incredibly multi-purpose.
Can I dab it on my body?
Yeah, what I would do is you put a little bit on the back of your hand.
Okay.
And then from there, like you can put a little bit, don't get it anywhere near your eyes. So
Okay.
in the case of a headache, I'll put it like way up here on my temples.
Okay.
I'll put a little bit at the end of my nose.
We're doing that now. Me and Golda are rubbing it on now.
Yeah.
Ooh, smells
Yeah.
good.
It does.
You want to get a little on your nose.
It's a very happy
Can I do it
smell,
on the?
isn't
Can I do it on the back of my
Is,
neck?
I always do it on the back of my neck.
Oh, that's my
Oh.
problem spot.
What does that do? in the
That's
back of
if
your
I
neck?
have headaches.
Oh.
I will just do it in those areas. Recently, we had a little mishap during rehearsal,
Put
and
some on my lower back.
one of our cast members just started to feel very nauseated.
Oh,
and so
no.
I just held my hand with peppermint oil
Smells
at her
good.
nose, and it really helped her to not feel that.
Smells
I'll put
great.
it right directly on my tummy, or you can
gonna
put
do
it
that
in a
now.
carrier oil if you're sensitive, because sometimes it might be too harsh.
Oh,
So you can put it in a carrier oil, something
Well.
like almond oil or coconut oil,
smells good.
and then you can rub it right on your tummy.
oh,
If I'm usually out all day, I get sweaty. If I can like just wipe down my armpits, and then I will put a few drops directly onto my pits. If it's too stingy, you can again put it in a carrier oil. I'll put it a little drop on the back of my hand, and then I'll just put it right on my teeth or under my tongue.
That's a great
It's
idea.
Great for freshening your breath. I literally use it for so many things. When I was visiting my mom in the hospital, and they have a certain funk.
Yeah.
I would pour it in a little spray bottle and just like freshen up the room, and
good
all the nurses would be
idea.
like, "Oh, it smells so good in here."
So
good
this is
idea.
food grade.
It's
You
food
would
grade. It's
recommend food grade.
organic. There's a company. I found that on Amazon. I really like it. I like the viscosity of it.
So for those of you who are listening to the podcast, it is Zongle, ZONGLE Therapeutics Organic Peppermint. Zongle.
we'll put it in the show notes.
notes.
Very
Yeah,
nice.
There's
It
also
smells
another company
good.
called Organic Infusions, and they do a lot of like bulk sales on essential oils, and I trust them a lot as well. So
Oh, wonderful.
yeah,
That smells good.
That's a great tip.
doTERRA is another company, of course.
What
yeah.
is it called?
doTERRA. That's another
doTERRA.
company. Yeah. So there's a lot of good stuff, but I just peppermint's one of my favorites.
I'm starting to tingle all over.
Me
How did-
too.
yeah, yeah.
My
You feel
face
it.
is tingling. Oh,
You
is that
feel
supposed
it.
to happen?
yeah.
Is that help
But
with the
that's why-
relaxation?
That's why you never want to get it close to your eyes.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Yeah,
if it happens to seep into your eyes, you're gonna have a couple minutes of like, holy,
yeah.
Yeah.
and just it'll be fine. Don't worry,
Okay.
you'll live through it.
Okay.
You know, I like
But-
this. This is very similar to Tiger Balm.
Yeah,
But you don't smell like old Japanese or Chinese grandma.
Right.
You just
or the
smell
Vicks.
Yeah.
It's not like
Right.
Vicks.
You're
Yeah.
more like an Altoid.
Also,
Yes.
if you are having sinus problems, again, here and on your chest,
Oh,
it's great.
I'm just
I
sniffing
love
it. I'm
this.
Yeah.
sniffing off the back of my
It's
hand.
just a great
And
thing
it's
to
so
have.
refreshing. Could you imagine sitting next to someone
Yeah.
smelly on a plane? You could just be like,
Oh
Yeah,
my
put it under-
gosh,
put it under your
has
nose.
saved me in
Just put-
airplanes.
Yeah. Put it,
Really?
You know, when you're really too close for comfort
Yeah,
and
just put it
someone's
in that
eating
divot.
something,
that divot up in between your upper lip.
I'll just be like,
Yeah.
Can people smell it on you?
yes.
Okay. Because
Yeah.
I can't smell anything but myself. All my sense of
Yeah.
reality has gone out the door.
Yeah.
she's in another dimension right now.
I'm sure this whole room smells like peppermint now.
Oh, wow. I can feel it behind my neck, too.
Feels great.
Wow.
Feels
Good
great.
for you.
Really,
I love
really
it. Great.
That's a great girl you got to,
Yeah,
Tracy.
really great. What about you, Kennedy? What's your girl you got
Girl,
to?
you got to. Well, I've only really started practicing this recently in the past year or so, because I never used to really pamper myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I do a lot of circus, a lot of teaching. It's very physical.
Yeah.
And my body gets sore and I just sleep it off. I rarely get massages. I get massaged maybe once a year. So I had to teach myself to pamper myself and
Isn't that
relax, and relax. So what I do recently, maybe once every other week, I'll just draw a hot bath with Epsom salts. Usually some kind of scented Epsom salts, like either jasmine or vanilla. And I put it in there. And then I turn down the lights. And right next to the tub, I have my iPad with Netflix, so I can watch my show, or Hulu, so I can watch my shows. And then I have something to eat, like a
Wait, you have something to eat
Yeah.
in the bathroom as well?
And then
Wow.
you do your
I'm in the tub.
taxes?
No, like something like a snack. Like sometimes I'll have ice cream, which by the way,
What?
Tillamook ice cream. I recommend it. Any of those flavors are really good by Tillamook. Very
What's your
good.
favorite flavor?
Right now, I based everything off their vanilla, so vanilla is really good. But I'm doing this chocolate fudge swirl really good. Oh, yeah, really good.
Do they have a flavor called moose tracks? Is that Tillamook?
No, that's
Vaughn's.
that's Ralph's Private Selection.
Oh, is it? Oh, okay. I recommend that as well. But anyways, yes, okay. So you recommend Tillamook.
I'm that nutty about ice cream because Ralph's Private Selection has moose tracks. But yeah, so I do that, and maybe I'll have something like sweet, like a donut or something. So something, something just really decadent or decadent to me, like a donut or something next to the tub. So I'm hot tub, like really hot. Epsom salts. Turn down the lights, watching your favorite show on an iPad, and eating whatever decadence means to you. Look, you could have a glass of wine. I don't really drink wine, but if a glass of wine is good for you, sometimes I'll have like a seltzer water and something sweet. And I'll just sit there for like 45 minutes just trying to relax.
So when did you happen upon this routine?
Wow.
When did I think it started, when did it start? It might have started when it was either really cold or really hot. Because I think one time it was like in LA this past summer, they had really crazy heat waves. So I think I sat in a cold tub.
Sure.
Because I don't have air conditioning in my building. I just have fans. So I sat in a cold tub, and that felt so good just to sit in a cold tub and just sit there. So I think the next time I did it, I had my Netflix there. And then I said, well, I should have a drink while I'm watching. So I had like soda water. And so it's become my thing now. Like every other week, I'll just soak in a
That's
tub.
so awesome. I always hear people talking about like baths with Epsom salts, but I never hear people like, and a donut.
Yeah. I'm telling you, don't just pamper yourself.
I mean,
pamper yourself. Like, what do you think pampering means to you? So for me, it means hot bath, watching some good TV or films, and eating something or drinking something that just really makes you happy. You know what? All at the same time.
Wow.
First of all, it's a
Sounds
great sort of little routine you have for yourself. But I was going to say, I like how Kennedy is just so austere. Like he just basically stumbled upon this. Whereas every Cosmo magazine I've ever read since I was 12 has said you should do this. Like every Cosmo and
But it's
Glamour.
I like Kennedy's version.
Candle.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
A lavender scent, and then a sachet mixed with white tea
Dark
and green.
chocolate truffles.
Right.
Yes, and then you're gonna have these. Yeah. Oh my gosh. But Kennedy's breaking it down, real life stuff. For me, you have the fancy ice cream. I'm the Thrifties.
Yeah, no,
Thrifties brand.
If that floats your boat, do it.
Or some fudgesicle.
Yeah,
Just
yeah.
eating a fudgesicle.
Do
you remember the fudgesicles?
Contact bar,
I have fudgesicles in
Yeah,
my
just have
freezer
some now
right now.
and laters of fudgesicles.
Yeah.
Sit back.
No bowl. And then
Just have a box of Raisinets, just in the tub. Yeah, if that works for you, as long as you're doing it in a hot tub, that works.
Totally.
And can you put a few drops of your
you put
peppermint
that in a
essential
in a
oil in
bath?
the
Oh,
water?
hell yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
why the hell not?
Yeah.
Next level.
Just a couple though, right? Because otherwise you'll feel very cold. Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. Just a couple. But yeah.
Okay. I love that. I love
that ritual.
I do too. What would be in your bath, Tracy?
Oh
What are your go-tos
Well,
for
I
your
keep
pampering?
thinking that you're in there for 45, and aren't you like a prune by
half
the
an hour.
end?
Half an hour. Well, I have
I
my
would be
hands up.
so wrinkled up. I wouldn't.
It just feels so good that I forget the wrinkle. But then I unwrinkle really fast, so that's really
Oh,
good.
okay.
So-
That's good. You're hydrated. That's why.
I feel like I'd want like chicken fingers.
Oh, go for it.
Yeah.
Why the hell not?
Oh,
I think I've
Oh, chicken
that would be
fingers.
awesome, right?
I think I've done it with. I think I've done it with an In-N-Out burger once.
Oh,
I've done.
you
French
walk on the
fries.
wild side.
I have
French fries.
No, I have. I have done the hot bath with a Netflix and an In-N-Out burger.
What?
My
I've done
God.
it. You do that because I swear because I love it's the stuff I love. I love In-N-Out burger. I love the hot bath. I love Netflix. Why not have enjoy it all
Decadent is
together?
not always sweet.
Yeah,
Sometimes
decadent
you
doesn't
need
mean
something
sweet.
fried.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
and greasy. Yeah.
Collision of worlds here with all the
Yeah.
good stuff.
It's therapeutic because Epsom salt is good for recovery.
There you go.
And then the
the
intake of salt.
scientist. she's a scientist, so she's bringing it home.
The
Yeah.
magnesium or whatever is in
Yes.
there, like going, and then intake of sodium, the real
Yes.
salt into your body makes you feel good too, because
You're going inside and outside. Talk about self-care all around.
Oh my
Yeah.
God.
I think you've stumbled across something that Glamour and Cosmopolitan has not.
Yeah.
They've just scratched the surface. I think you're getting down and dirty in where it needs to be.
It doesn't have to be fancy. If you want barbecue ribs in the bathtub, do it. I would do it.
Cornbread from the park's finest.
there you
Just
go.
get a tray.
Yeah.
Right, and if there's any crumbs, they just fall into the bath.
That's
Anyway.
right.
It just adds to the minerals
Yes.
right in the bath.
Yeah. Just do it.
Thank you both for sharing. I am gonna try it. I'm gonna go through the drive-through, and I'm gonna get some Epsom salts, and then take a bath.
I'm just going to go to In-N-Out in my robe,
Go straight
my
home.
slippers, and just go home.
Do it.
Save some time. Just dive right in. Awesome. Okay, I'm good. I'm good with this. I like this. Well, thank you guys so much for sharing your
Thank you
girl.
so much.
You got to.
Well, thank you so much, Kennedy and Tracy, for joining us today.
Thank you guys.
Oh, thank you for having us.
What a treat it's been.
Absolutely. And your show is called Tales of Clamor.
Yes. At the Aratani Black Box Theater in Little Tokyo of Los Angeles, running February 8th through March 3rd.
And what days of the week will they be on?
Oh, we run Fridays through Mondays. Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and Monday.
Wonderful.
Perfect.
You have matinees?
We do. We have high school matinees on Fridays at 11. We have 8 p.m. Friday, 2 p.m. Saturday, 8 p.m. Saturday, 5 p.m. Sunday, and 8 p.m. on Monday.
Wow. Wow. That's a busy schedule. And do you have a website as well?
You can buy tickets at jacccc.org. And our Pull Project website is pullprojectensemble.com.
Mm-hmm.
Wonderful.
And if you find us on Instagram, we can personally share a discount code.
Oh, yes.
We can't say it right
but
now, but you
Okay.
can find us at Tracy Akemi 1 or
The Kennedy Cab.
yeah,
At
and
Instagram.
and then we can send you a little code.
Sounds good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, this production for the good folks out there is in a black box.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yes.
That makes it a lot more intimate.
Yes.
Can you explain real quick what does black box mean?
It's a smaller configuration. We only seat 88 people.
Mm.
And in this configuration, the audience is pretty much on stage with us.
Cool.
So we're right in their laps. We'll be in your lap. So you can see us sweat and you can hear us grunt when we do our circus stuff. So
Except Kennedy never grunts.
And Kennedy doesn't sweat.
No, Tracy doesn't sweat.
Yeah.
At least she doesn't smell like it because of the peppermint oil.
High
Anyway.
metabolism. Yes.
Yeah, it's inside the Aratani Theater, which is an 880-seater. And so you are going to actually enter from the back workshop and go directly onto the stage. So you won't even go into the big house.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, it's a 10th of the seats.
Cool.
I love it. It sounds very intimate, like an intimate experience.
Yeah, be immersive.
It is.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, we always like to end each episode asking each other, right, Wanru, what we are going to take away from today. Any little nuggets and little tidbits that are going to be on you, maybe lingering around in your brain. Kennedy, what's yours? He's like,
I think we'll wrap up with
Oh, okay.
Kennedy's.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
okay, yeah. Okay, so Tracy.
Tracy.
I think the thing that's like swirling in my head right now, so I know it's going to be a takeaway, is our discussion about honoring everyone's process of communication. And if it comes at the end of a meeting, like it's to be valued, and that's actually like a form of teamwork. And yeah, it's like trusting the group process and the collective process. Yeah.
Wanru?
It will be what Tracy said about the testimony that was given by the Japanese Americans and how difficult it is sometimes to speak your truth, to find your voice, but that by doing so, not only are you healing yourself, but you're actually helping other people heal. So you owe it to yourself and you owe it to other people, because you may actually be like a impetus for someone else for their healing. So, and the community got together because a few people started to speak up, right? So I'll remember that. And I look forward to seeing your show with that knowledge too. That's going to make it extra meaningful for me.
Yeah. Well, for me, mine, I have two things that I'm going to take away. The first is the power of community and how much strength you can draw from community, and how community can help you find your voice, or you can be part of the collective voice. There's so many different ways that you can voice something, or it's just so powerful. And again, I've seen an early version of your show, and I'm so excited to see how it's grown since then, and seeing that this finding of your voice within this community. So that's one. And the second, I will have to say, is something in terms of just a trend that I saw among the four of us, and that is that we are all creators, and that's what artistry is. And each of us has found a very unique way in which to create and in which to communicate of ourselves to others. And I think that it's so funny because when I'm telling you the story about what happened in my work environment and how I was fighting against the stream to say, no, this is who I am, you guys were so quick to say, yeah, what's up with that? You should just, you guys, they're wrong. You're right, Golda. Da, da, da. And I'm like, yeah, they're my friends. But it just goes to show that this is our tribe.
Except for me, I was devil's advocate. But I was playing a role.
It's just so we have a more comprehensive view of this whole thing. So those are the things that I will take away.
Aww.
And now, Mr. Kennedy.
Yeah.
What I took away is find your voice, share the floor, check your ego at the door.
So that does it for us today. We have this inner voice in our head. That's it for us today on the Ganru Show. Is that what we're calling it? The Gantra Entity Show.
Yeah, Gantra Entity Show.
The Gantra Entity Show. And if you liked what you heard today and what you listened to today, we invite you to like us and subscribe to us on YouTube, as well as, right?
Yeah.
Other podcast providers.
Every podcast provider out there, such as Apple and Google Podcasts, Spotify, Overcast, Stitcher, and you can always ask Siri or Alexa to play us on your HomePods and iPhones.
Yes, and if you do ask Alexa or Siri, you just say, "Hey Siri, play the Ganru Show."
You have to pronounce it that way?
You have to say Ganru. That's how they know
okay.
That's how they know who we are. But until next time, I'm Golda.
I'm Wanru.
I'm Tracy.
And I'm Kennedy.
And this has been the
Gantra
Entity
Show.
See you next time. Thanks for listening.
Bye.